Hello and welcome to Food for You and the Planet, a fresh new podcast that explores healthy and environmentally sustainable food solutions. This podcast is brought to you by Healthy Plan Eat Online Farmers Market. I'm Dr. Rosemary Ostfeld and I'm your host. Together, we'll hear from leaders in environmental science, agriculture, medicine, nutrition, entrepreneurship, and more. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to hear all the latest in healthy and sustainable food with Food for You and the Planet. Today's episode features André Leu, PhD and Director of Regeneration International. André Leu, PhD, was named International Director of Regeneration International in 2017. Prior to then, he was President of IFOAM, Organics International, the international umbrella organization for the organic sector. During his tenure as president of IFOAM, André served on the Regeneration International Steering Committee. During 40-plus years of visiting and working in more than 100 countries, André acquired an extensive knowledge of farming and environmental systems across Asia, Europe, the Americas, Africa, and Australasia. Thank you so much for being here today.
Pleasure, and thank you for having me, Rosemary.
Wonderful. So what is Regeneration International and what types of work does it do?
Okay, well, Regeneration International, we are essentially a network, and at the moment we have about 575 partners. We use the word partners because we like the idea rather than members, as a flat structure, as a network in over 70 countries on every arable continent. I say arable continent because at this stage, Antarctica isn't arable. Not a lot of farming there. But, so what do we do? Well, network, our primary role is to bring people together. That's a very important role. The other really critical role is getting the information out about regenerative agriculture. We were formed in 2015, and it was people like Ronnie Cummins from the Organic Consumers Association, Dr. Vandana Shiva, Dr. Hans Herring from Millennium Institute, Steve Rye from Macola Natural Health, and myself at that stage, the president of IFOAM Organics International. The five of us formed the original steering committee actually in 2014. And out of that, we formed Regeneration International. Now, very few people had heard about regenerative agriculture before then. We were the people who basically use media, use communication, use networking to get it out. So every day now you hear about regenerative agriculture. It's probably the biggest agricultural revolution in the last 100 years, and a very positive one. And that's our primary role, is to get that information out, get those discussions happening, and change agriculture, industrial agriculture paradigm, which is actually an existential threat into one of the most positive, change paradigms, where we're reversing climate change, where we're producing healthy food without toxic chemicals, where we're bringing communities together, empowering people, empowering farmers to be their own agents of change. It's one of the wonderful good news stories, and that's our role.
How did you become interested in food and agriculture?
Oh, a long time ago. I come from a farming family, so I grew up with it. And then when I left school, I actually if you really want to know the story, I was 17 and I'd never finished school, and I hitchhiked about 2,000 miles from home. And one day I was just walking through this pathway through this rainforest, and I came to one of the early pioneering organic farms, and it's just full of all these tropical flowers and tropical fruits, tropical vegetables, and as if I'd stumbled across the Garden of Eden. And at that point, I knew what I wanted to do, and that's what we've been doing. You know, my wife and I, we have our organic farm. We raised our children there. We have, you know, orchards of tropical fruits, tropical flowers, tropical plants. So that was the dream when I was 17, and at 70, still living it.
I love that. That's awesome. I'd love to hear more about your time spent as an organic farmer and about your farm.
Okay. Well, this farm's actually our third farm. Whenever you're doing something new, you make mistakes, but you don't be frightened of failure. But in the end, our farm, we have about 30 acres under fruit. We essentially, it's a agroecological organic farm. We have around 100 species of fruit trees. We have another 100 species of different tropical bamboos, water lilies, flowering plants. We have another 100 acres of tropical rainforest that we've regenerated and brought back. So for me, the system is what we call agroecological, regenerative, and organic. We run animals in the system. The main commercial part, we have 5 what I'll call commercial fruit crops. Most of the people here probably wouldn't know them. Think maybe lychee, rambutan, durian, star apple, mangosteen. These are highly tropical fruits, and we were involved in bringing these fruits to Australia and starting these new industries. Underneath it, the orchard, we have incredibly high biodiversity of what we call functional biodiversity. So we have all these different flowering plants that, for instance, are host plants for beneficial insects that control our pests and disease, other ones that provide all the nitrogen, other ones that build up the carbon, other ones that will feed our livestock, and so on. So that's where the agroecology comes in. We have this incredible diversity and ecosystem, agro-ecosystem within the farming system. And also, can I say that we bring in lots of native wildlife and endangered wildlife, so that since we've regenerated the rainforest, it's brought back all these key species that we have large flightless bird called the cassowary. One of Australia's famous animals called a platypus. It's a monotreme. It's a bit like a beaver, but it has a duck bill, lays eggs, suckles its young. We have another one that looks like a hedgehog. It's called an echidna, with spines, that does the same thing. Then we have very rare bird species that you'll find in our orchard. So we have this lovely combination of agroecological biodiversity, but also ecological biodiversity, and they go hand in hand. So, and can I say, it's a commercial farm, and it's highly productive. We produce tons of commercial fruit. You know, not just how to say a small backyard. We are commercial growers and market tons and tons of fruit with these systems.
You served as the president of the International Federation of Organic Movements, IFOAM. Can you tell me a bit about IFOAM and what your time as president of IFOAM was like?
Okay, well, IFOAM is the global umbrella body for the organic movement. And the time I was president, we had 870 member organizations in at that stage, about 113 countries. So once again, on every continent. And what our role was, of course, is to promote organic agriculture, to bring in programs for organic agriculture, using organic agriculture, for instance, to bring people out of poverty. So we would work, particularly in Africa and Asia and in Latin America, with smallholder farmers. These are some of the poorest people in the world. For instance, when we talk about food security, what we mean by that, when people are food insecure, there are times where they go without food, and they call them the hungry months. The times where children go to bed at night without eating, and these things are disastrous. We know that children don't get adequate food in the first 3 years of their life. It affects them for the rest of their lives. So bringing people out of this extreme poverty, making sure that children are well fed. So we did these programs using, for instance, group certification, working with them to put in kitchen gardens. The first market is the kitchen table. And from there you work out. And then we'd also use group certification to get them products, high value products, for instance, pineapples and coffee sold in Europe, or coffee from Mexico sold into the United States. And that money, instead of going into the trade, going back to the farmers to take them out of poverty. You visit these people, they've got nice houses now, they can actually afford to send their children to school, particularly the girls. If they've got enough money, they'll send the boy, but not the girls. We made sure that boys and girls get educated so they can have a good future. And I remember one of the stories, actually, this is actually in Ethiopia, where working with our members, the Institute for Sustainable Development, and they regenerated this large area of Tigray. And this is an area where thousands of people actually die of hunger, and take them out of this, incredibly violent poverty and into well-being. And I remember one of the stories they told me, they said, "Oh, look, the women now can buy new dresses." And I said, "Oh, that's interesting. What's the significance?" And they said, "Well, they were so poor, they had holes in their dresses. They felt like they were indecent, so they wouldn't socialize. Once they had new dresses, the women went and socialized and brought back the whole sense of community, and the whole community now has well-being." Something as simple as that, food, dresses. These are things that people couldn't afford. People were dying of hunger. Children suffering from malnutrition and being undeveloped the rest of their lives. We can turn this around, and in effect, through group certification, we've brought millions of people out of poverty. It's one of the great success stories of the organic movement that still never gets properly told. And, if we could get the money that's wasted in, just see it wasted all the time, wars and useless programs, if we could get that and help these farmers, we could bring hundreds of millions out of poverty and turn things around. So if you ask, what's our greatest achievement? Well, that to me is a wonderful achievement to have done that, or been involved, you say. been involved. I'm just one little, just when I'm president, I was just one little bit player. There's a lot of people working together with this.
It sounds like IFOAM and you and everyone involved has really helped change a lot of lives. What are your thoughts on certification schemes such as organic and regenerative organic certified? What
I'm a great.
role can what role can certification schemes play in helping people produce and consume environmentally sustainable food?
Okay, thanks. Look, I'm a great believer in certification. In fact, I'm from the generation of organic farmers that started, the first ones in the 1970s. And we did that because we wanted to ensure, stop fraud, because you have people making claims and that they're not organic. So we wanted to make sure we protect both farmers and consumers and ensure that that premium goes back to farmers. So that's the intention. And it still largely works that way. We're pushing now for new reforms and making it better. Like anything, as time goes by, there's unanticipated problems, but these are all solvable. But really, for me, if you want to say, certification means a guarantee to the consumer that what is said is organic is organic. It is really important. Now, there's different types of certification. One of the ones which I'm a great promoter on is group certification, because for smaller farmers, certification is really expensive and they can't afford it. In fact, in most of Asia and Africa and Latin America, the cost of certification is usually more than the farmer will earn for a year. So we put a lot of time into developing group certifications so that they can be certified. They can get the premium, but also the consumers can be guaranteed of integrity in the product. So that was a very important part of my time as president, was bringing in, making sure that these systems were scaled up.
How would you define regenerative agriculture?
Okay, we've been very clear from the beginning, because as I said, we were the people who really put it out there. There's quite a lot of definitions, and what I want to say, most of those definitions are equivalent. In our case, our definition is on our website. So if people want to have a look, go on regenerationinternational.org and you'll find our definition. But essentially, what we're saying, regenerative systems are. Just let me quickly get it properly for you. So what I want to say is, regenerative systems improve the environment, soil, plants, animal welfare, health, and communities. The opposite of regenerative is degenerative. Agricultural systems that use degenerative practices and inputs that damage the environment, soil, health, genes, and communities and involve animal cruelty are not regenerative. So what I just want to put here, for us, the big distinction is for people is something regenerative. Does it improve, or is it degenerative? Does it degenerate? So we would very strongly argue that anything that degenerates the environment degenerates health, degenerates, communities, exploits. These things are not regenerative, and it's a very, very simple way of deciding, is it regenerative or isn't it? So there are arguments out there about whether you should use toxic chemicals in regenerative agriculture. Well, if you're using something that is toxic, it's degenerative. By definition, it is not regenerative. So how can you call something that is using GMOs and spraying Roundup and poisons everywhere regenerative? It's a misuse of the term.
What are some of your concerns with pesticides and GMOs?
Okay, we'll start with pesticides. I've published a lot of papers on them, and I've written 2 books. I am an expert on it. And I'll put it down simply. There is not one published scientific study that shows that one pesticide is safe for our children. I just want to say that. At this stage, I'll say it, and no one's come out to me and shown me a scientific study to show that any level of pesticide is actually safe. On the other hand, I have thousands of studies showing that the smallest amounts are completely unsafe. And that is the issue here, is that we are being lied to say that the residues in our food are safe. It's an absolute lie. The pesticide agencies are captured by the pesticide companies, by the pesticide cartels, as we call it. The average American has multiple pesticides in their blood and urine. And, some of the worst things is, babies are now being born with multiple chemicals in them. And when you test the umbilical cord, there's one study showing over 260 chemicals in the umbilical cord of babies. We have no science to show that that is safe. And every bit of science to show that that is unsafe. And it shows that our regulatory agencies are not doing their job. They are not protecting our unborn, newborn, and children in the most critical development phases. But on the other hand, we have very good studies showing that children who eat a diet of organic, they don't have the pesticides. And for me, that is probably the most important thing that anyone can do, is make sure that their children have the best start in life, and that is eating organic food. And it is how can I say that? The cheapest, most cost-effective way to ensure that our children have a good future and a healthy lifestyle.
What can people do to ensure that products that are genetically modified, made with CRISPR or in similar ways, are labeled transparently?
Okay, the answer is there's only one way: buy organic. Simple as that. There is no transparent labeling. It's all over the place. Now, CRISPR isn't even labeled. The older genetic modified systems are partially labeled, and I'm not going to go too far down the rabbit hole with this. Just to say, there's a whole range of new techniques that are out there, and they are not labeled. CRISPR products are coming on the market now, and they are not labeled. So there's only one way: make sure that what you buy is certified organic. That way you can avoid GMOs and you can avoid pesticides. And I want to say the whole thing I said with pesticides, how there's no evidence they're safe. It's the same thing with GMOs. When we look at the studies, they are unsafe. And it's only the pesticide companies, GMO companies, the same people, they're the ones who make the claims of safety, but it's their studies, they're conflicts of interest. Their scientists who they pay to do it say these. The independent science clearly shows that they are dangerous, that they lead to, that they're responsible for the epidemic of non-contagious diseases. We could probably call it a pandemic now. When you look at all the diseases, type 2 diabetes, cancers, blood pressure diseases, all the inflammation, all the, other diseases that people have now, they are not the only cause, but they are a major cause. The fact is, every elderly person in the developed world now takes multiple medications for chronic diseases. There's virtually none that don't have multiple chronic diseases now. And food is one of the primary causes. There are other ones as well, but fix up your diet and basically you'll fix up your health.
There's concern about climate change and meat consumption. What role can animals play in regenerative agriculture systems?
Okay, it's a very important debate at the moment. And can I say, the methane that is given off, that's the greenhouse gas given off by animals. We need to divide it into two types of animal production. There's one, confined animal feeding operations, in other words, factory farms. Now that methane goes up into the environment and causes climate change. Then in regenerative systems, we don't have factory farms. Our animals are on pasture. They're eating grass. One, they put out less methane, but what is happening, methane is short-lived. It gets turned to carbon dioxide. The plants absorb that carbon dioxide because what happens when plants photosynthesize, they take carbon dioxide and water, and they use solar energy, and they turn it into glucose, which is our primary energy source. When plants grow, about 30% of that gets put back into the soil to feed the soil microbiome. And so with regenerative systems, more greenhouse gases are trapped into the soil than are emitted. So ours are negative, and we have the science, extensive science. What we need to do is ban factory farms, not just for climate change, but for animal cruelty. It's totally wrong. And also the fact that the manure lagoons are polluting all the rivers, polluting the air for the neighbours. Everything about these systems are completely wrong. They should be banned. But we scale up regenerative, and we have the evidence. If we change our grazing systems to regenerative grazing, because that's 68% of agricultural lands, we can reverse climate change. In fact, we take out more greenhouse gases than are currently being put out by all the cars and factories by scaling up our systems. And we have the science and the practice to do this.
What is the Regeneration International Regeneration Hub?
Okay, that's basically, I said we're a network and an information center. So the hub is part of networking, but also a very good place for people to get information as well. And in there, for instance, one of the best resources you'll see is our farm map and all the regenerative farmers, but also if people want to just get a lot of information on regenerative agricultural systems, and I say systems plural, we work in partnership with all these other like-minded systems, so that the agroecology, organic agriculture, holistic managed grazing, there's a lot of other grazing systems, agroforestry. We can go on and on and on. Permaculture. That there are so many good systems out there. So we want to make that all available so people can look at them all. It's not about one size fits all. It's about, this is, I say, it's the most innovative space in agriculture that's happened. And there's so much happening. We want to encourage innovation and ideas. And for us, the critical thing is when you're looking at all these wonderful systems, just think, does it regenerate or does it degenerate? And use that very simple way of looking at them and deciding which ones you want to adopt, which are best for your farming system or your community.
What is the 4 per 1,000 Soils for Food Security and Climate initiative?
Okay, that's set up by the French government just before actually launched it at the Paris meeting in 2015. And the French scientists worked out if we could get all of agriculture to increase the soil carbon in farming by 4,000%, not much, we could reverse climate change. So the whole purpose of this is to start getting this change in agriculture. At the moment, agriculture's probably, depending on how you look at all the inputs, it's between 30 to 50% of all greenhouse gases come out of agricultural systems. What we can do is change it from being a major polluter, a major part of the problem, to becoming the major solution. We get enough of agriculture to change, we can take out all the current greenhouse gases and reverse climate change.
Your book, The Regenerative Agriculture Solution, co-written with Ronnie Cummins and with a foreword by Vandana Shiva, will be released on September 12th of this year. What are some of the key topics in the book?
Okay, can I firstly say that this book was started by Ronnie, one of our founders of Regeneration International, and he passed away quite suddenly April last year. And so I was asked by his wife Rose Welsh and the Chelsea Green, the publishers, to finish it. And of course, Ronnie being a close friend, of course I was going to do that. Plus the fact is that I was involved in the book and helping with it, so I actually knew what the book was about, and and part of it, it was what we in Regeneration International were going to do. So I was the logical person to finish it. So essentially, it starts with the Flores brothers in Mexico and how they used the agave plant, the leaves that were thrown away because they're inedible, and started fermenting it, turning it into silage, and made it into very edible food. And how scaling this up in Mexico was a way of regenerating the landscape with an agroforestry system, using essentially native plants and also using the native legume trees to put in protein. And we could use that to increase food production in these areas, and at the same point increase the forests and stop all the degradation. And then the book talks about the importance of regenerating ecosystems to cool down the planet. For instance, a lot of the greenhouse gases, not just fossil fuels, about half of them actually come from the clearing of forests and also the loss of soil organic matter. Now, we can stop the clearing and the loss of soil organic matter. We can actually reduce the amount of greenhouse gases, but also not just reduce it, we start to reverse it. We start to put it back into the soils. We put it all back into the trees and the biomass, but also we cool the planet. There's a big difference in areas that are cleared to areas that are not cleared. So in the United States, for instance, there's very good studies showing in the last 100 years along the East Coast, and I know from my experience when I first went to the East Coast in 1979, and the way it is now, the way that the trees have regenerated, is actually, on average, the East Coast of the United States is 1.7 degrees Fahrenheit cooler than it was 100 years ago. And yet you can contrast that with other parts of the United States that haven't allowed trees to regenerate, or where they've cleared them with agriculture. And they're warmer. They're getting up to 2 degrees Fahrenheit warmer now. And it just shows that we can cool the world down by regenerating our ecosystems, and and at the same time, we can take the carbon dioxide, the main greenhouse gases, out of the atmosphere. Explain how to do it, and then the plan we've got on how to finance it to scale it up, and the last chapter's on that.
You've been teaching at universities. What has that experience been like for you?
Okay, I've actually been teaching at universities for quite a long time, and I have a postgraduate degrees in adult education, but part of what we've been doing with Regeneration International is scaling up. This is to actually get education. So we started the Regeneration International Academy, and we're partnered with the South Seas University, and that they gave me the opportunity to set up a school of regenerative and organic agriculture. So, and I'm a professor there, and I'm very pleased about that because yes, it's a small university, but what I found working in larger universities is that they don't like innovation, and they like to teach the status quo. That they really don't like people like myself who are putting something new and innovative. But this university has given us the opportunity to do this. So I'm actually very, very excited about it because I've had decades teaching, and this is a wonderful opportunity, because really the best way to scale up what we're talking about is through education. Education is the cheapest and most effective way to do it. So that's what we're doing now, and we're running the courses every semester. And they're online too, which makes it really easy for people all around the world to do.
What are you most proud of so far in your career in food and agriculture?
Having a family farm and raising our children on a farm. To me, that's what life is all about.
I love that. Thank you so much for a fantastic interview and all of the wonderful work you're doing on regenerative agriculture. It's so important. So thank you for the work that you do.
It's a pleasure, and thank you for your work as well. It's so important to get this out.
Thank you.